Chapter 15. Secrets and Discoveries. Michael Collins stood outside St. Paul's Cathedral, trying to shelter from the rain whilst he waited for his mystery contact to arrive. His fact-finding mission had proven pretty fruitless so far. He deeply regretted that he was not able to attend Jack's funeral, but a hand-delivered note that had been slipped under his hotel room door the previous night had intrigued him, and so he had resolved to meet this anonymous person who claimed to have information regarding the glove. He stamped his feet on the ground, trying to get some heat back into his toes, which were slowly going numb as he waited in the cold. The great bells of St. Paul's rang out overhead, notifying the city that it was 11 o'clock. Blowing on his hands, he continued to wait. It wasn't until about 10 past the hour that he was approached by a tall, slim man exiting from a small door at the side of the great cathedral. The man was dressed in a long black gown with a red trim. Michael assumed that he must be a member of St. Paul's clergy. "I must apologise for the method of contact, but these are dangerous times, my son. One cannot be too careful. You never know who's watching. Follow me if you would, please," the new stranger said as he ushered Michael inside the cathedral through the same door he had just appeared from. Michael obliged and followed the strange priest inside the cathedral. They walked along the south aisle, past the whispering gallery, and into a small antechamber. The chamber was full of shelving littered with rolled parchments, many of them made from vellum. Michael sat down in the chair that was offered to him by the priest and waited for the man to continue. "My name is Father John," the priest said, finally introducing himself before he continued. "I am the keeper of records here at the cathedral. Many of our church records were destroyed in a great fire when the old cathedral and most of the city burned to a cinder, and yet many still survive. We have been following your exploits for some time now, and we are of the opinion that we have information vital to your cause. We too have a vested interest to safeguard the books from falling into the wrong hands." "Excuse me, Father, but if I'm not mistaken, you said books? I was only aware of the one," Michael said, interrupting the priest. Yes, well, I will come to that in due course. But first, my informants have brought to my attention that you're seeking information pertaining to an organisation that calls itself the Glove. They are a particularly vile group, although I believe organisation is the wrong term to use. They're really a brotherhood of sorts. Their origin go back further than even our records begin. Nevertheless, we believe they came into existence sometime around the 21st century BC. However, they only began to attract the church's attention when they started to exert their influence in Europe after the Second Crusade. "How do you know all of this?" Michael asked, now intrigued by these new revelations. "The church has always had an interest in these things, especially during that period of history. The church was far more political then than it is today. It has taken great interest in the morality of men, and in some cases the fallibility of them. Such things which can bring about total war and cause great suffering trouble us greatly. So long as the books remained hidden, there was little danger, so we chose not to interfere. Now that this seems less certain, we believe it is our duty to ensure that good will triumph over evil." Father John momentarily paused before he continued. "There is nothing good about this particular brotherhood. They are tainted by their lust for knowledge and power, and as such are inherently evil. Driven by an overwhelming need, to control. They seek ultimate power. Knowledge is power, and therefore as the books are the source of absolute knowledge, they can act as the gateway to absolute power. In the wrong hands this could be disastrous. The glove has systematically been searching for them for centuries, millennia even. They must be prevented from locating the books at all costs. You must tread carefully on this path. The serpent is a dangerous creature, and this particular viper is the most dangerous of all. You cannot just cut off its head, for a new one will sprout in its place. To succeed, you must also remove the heart and pierce it with the tools of God. Only then will it be vanquished. You are partially correct about the book. As the legend goes, there was originally just one. It was split into 7 pieces, in part due to the glove many millennia ago. The pieces were entrusted to 7 great civilizations that hid them. Many of these ceased to exist in the modern world, and so most of the pieces remain safe because they were lost to us. Unfortunately, the glove has gradually been piecing together an idea of where to find them. It is my belief that they are now very close to being in a position to lay their hands on many, if not all of them. If this is allowed to happen, they will sweep across our world like a plague carried by a whirlwind, laying waste to everything and everyone in their path. I have in my possession a map of sorts, upon which 3 of the remaining 6 pieces were last known to be located. Know that you will be welcome into any church along the way, and will give aid where we can to help you in your quest, if it is in our power to do so, the priest said, handing Michael a very delicate vellum scroll. Why can't you undertake this yourselves, if you don't mind me asking, Father? Michael asked as he took the scroll from the man. That is not in our path, my son. We are just the record keepers and the watchers. We do not possess the power to take on the glove directly. And you think we do? Have faith. Sometimes even the smallest fell giants. Take this as well. Only use it in your darkest hour of need. It will protect you all, the priest added as he handed a small object wrapped in sackcloth to Michael. How will we know when that is? Michael inquired. You will know. Now you must leave. Go with God, my son, and good luck. The priest finished. Michael left St. Paul's, his head still spinning with these new revelations. It was late in the evening when Chris, James and Louis returned to Martinstow from the Mount. They were all tired from the long day. They headed for the smoking room and sank down into the crimson leather armchairs in front of a roaring log fire that Rachel had lit earlier that afternoon. The day had sparked many memories. They sat and reminisced about some of the better times. James took out a packet of cigarettes and sparked one up. Chris walked over to a walnut cabinet standing in the corner of the room and took out 3 brandy glasses, along with a very fine crystal decanter containing a particularly smooth Louis Cannes brandy. He poured a good measure into each glass, handing one to James. All I need now is a cigar to go with this, and I'll be quite content for the rest of the evening, Chris announced. There's a box in the drawer of the table over there. Not sure what brand, but knowing my uncle, there'll be something special, James said, pointing to a small table along the west wall. They certainly are, Chris said as he lifted the lid on the box. He's the same brand of Havanas that Castro smokes, if I'm not much mistaken. Why am I not surprised? He always did like the best, James commented, as he warmed the side of his glass with his Zippo in order to release the brandy's full potential. As the aroma filtered up to his nostrils, he took a large gulp and sighed, relaxing into the soft leather back of the armchair. His phone vibrated on the side table next to him. Picking it up, he flicked through the newly received message. "Ah, Michael's coming down tomorrow. He has some news for us," James said. "He will fill us in when he arrives, as he doesn't want to say anything on an unsecure line. We'll have to pick him up from the station by the sounds of things." That reminds me, I've been meaning to sort out some encrypted phones. Norwood seems to know our every move, almost even before we do. I wonder if he's been tapping us. Well, we'll have to put a stop to that, Chris mused. Well, it can only be the ones that you guys are using. Rachel and I picked up 2 encrypted phones when we went to Cateel. Rachel joined them in the smoking room. She'd been busy in the library reading through the last of the documents. She hadn't found any further information on the glove, but had gained a great insight into the expenditure of Martinstowe estate during the 19th century, probably enough to write quite a sizable thesis on the subject. Feeling rather frustrated, she collapsed onto the large crimson leather sofa that matched the armchairs currently occupied by the boys. "Join us in a brandy?" Chris asked, recognising the stressed look on her face. "Thanks, just what I need right now," she sweetly replied. "I don't suppose I can tempt you with a choice cigar as well?" he added, knowing full well she'd say no. He just wanted to see the look of horror and disgust on her face at the mere suggestion of it. She looked down her nose at him as she replied, "Ugh, don't be disgusting. You know those things will kill you. Besides, you two seem to be doing a fine job of smoking this room out by yourselves. Thank you very much. The brandy will be fine." "Ha! Many things have tried to kill me, and none have succeeded so far. There's always a first time, which in this case would also be the last. Just tempting fate, are we?" "Wouldn't be difficult. Would be difficult when I don't believe in fate." Ugh, typical smart answer, she retorted as she settled herself deeper into the cosy cushions of the sofa. "Thanks, Chris," she said as she took the brandy from Chris. "Is there anything interesting on the box?" Rachel asked after a few minutes of sitting in silence. "Dunno, have a look if you like," James replied, picking up the remote off the coffee table next to his chair. He tossed it over to her, landing on her chest right between her breasts. "Were you intending to do that?" she asked, giving him a slightly huffy look. "No, just luck, I guess," he replied with a cheeky grin. "Not this again," Chris said. "I can see you two are going to have to be separated at some point." "Oh, light enough. It's just a bit of harmless banter. A bit of fun, Mr. Grumpy," James retorted. "I know what your idea of fun is, and I'm not sure I approve. Behave yourselves." Rachel ignored this part of their conversation. Her cousin could be rather overprotective when he wanted to be, yet she wasn't about to start an argument with him about it. She was her own woman, and quite capable of making her own decisions and mistakes. She flicked through the channels. There wasn't a lot on of any real interest. In the end, she settled for an episode of The Big Bang Theory. It was the one with rock, paper, scissors, Lizard and Spock. The 3 boys continued to drain their brandy glasses and refill. Apparently, they were in one of those moods to get absolutely plastered. It was their tried and tested method for dealing with the loss of friends without really having to tackle the emotional void. Oh well, boys will be boys, Rachel thought to herself. Best leave them to it. At least it would be entertaining to watch them attempt to tackle the stairs later when they finally decided to go to bed. They would attempt them using each other's shoulders for support, guaranteed at some point to fall over each other, tumble back down the stairs and end up in a heap, laughing, before getting up and trying again. Rachel woke early the next day, and after having a lovely hot shower in one of the many bathrooms of the house, she headed downstairs to the kitchen to have breakfast. She was surprised to find James already up and cooking a fry-up on the Aga. "I didn't expect you to be up so early, after last night," she said with a smile as she entered the kitchen, taking in the great smell of bacon frying. "I'm always up early after a heavy night. Not sure why. I could really use the extra sleep, but once I'm awake, I have to get up. Your cousin, on the other hand, I suspect won't be up for hours. He's not the best after a heavy night, especially after that much brandy. I'm pretty sure we polished off the entire decanter. Might have to replace that. Something neither my wallet or myself are looking forward to. I think my wallet will be burning a hole through my pocket after that," he said with his usual cheeky grin. "Yes, you were all pretty merry by the time you headed off to bed," laughing as she remembered the sounds of their attempts at getting up the stairs. "Not one of our finest moments, I must admit," he replied with a slightly sheepish grin on his face. "Right, what can I offer you for breakfast? Cereal, toast, bacon? What do you fancy?" "I rather fancy joining you in a full English, if that's okay. The smell of that bacon has hooked me." "One full English coming right up, my lady," he said in a most charming voice. "Morning, bud. How's the head?" James said as Louis walked into the kitchen. "Better than expected for once. You cooking breakfast?" "Yeah, you keen?" "Definitely. I'll take it Flacky isn't up yet." "That would be a no. Someone that isn't that great with the morning after. I'd give it at least another 40 minutes before there's even the hint that the beast might be about to rise," James said, trying not to laugh as he referred to Chris as a beast. Chris appeared at about 10:30, and as predicted, looked rather worse for wear. "Where's the coffee at?" he demanded as he casually sauntered into the kitchen. "I need something to get me over this hangover. I feel like someone left a very angry hammer-wielding Thor smashing around inside my head." Rachel and James both laughed at him. "Heavy night, cuz?" Rachel asked, trying her best to quell her laughter. "Ugh, too heavy. Never, never, never again. Milton, you're a bad influence on me," he said as he collapsed into the nearest chair. "And as for you, young lady, we'll be having words. How on God's earth you ever managed to convince me that flaming brandy shots were a good idea, I will never know." "You didn't object last night," she replied, still trying not to laugh at her cousin's hungover state. "Well, you need to liven up. We've got to go and pick up Michael in half an hour," James reminded him. "Tell him to walk," Chris replied. "I'm not sure I can stand, let alone drive anywhere." "Here, get this down you. I think you'll feel a lot better after eating something," Rachel said as she placed a plate of eggs and bacon accompanied by a steaming mug of coffee in front of him. "What? No sausages? What kind of service do you call this?" he said jokingly as he hungrily eyed the plate. "Sorry, that's what you get for staying in bed for too long. If it's any consolation, they were very nice sausages, Louis replied with a smirk. Thanks, I'll remember that the next time I cook for you, Chris replied with a snort. Half an hour later, James, accompanied by a rather more invigorated Chris, left the estate to go and pick up Michael from the station. Chris had certainly picked up a bit and was currently trying to sort out some encrypted phones from one of his contacts. They had to wait in the station car park for ages. Predictably, the trains were suffering delays. Michael eventually appeared from the station and jumped into the back of the green Range Rover. "You boys alright? Good to see you. Have I got some news for you guys?" he exclaimed as he greeted his two friends. "We're good, thanks, all things considered," Chris replied. "Fancy a coffee?" he asked as he felt the last hit of caffeine was beginning to wear off. "Sounds good to me. I can fill you in with slightly more comfortable surroundings than this heap," Michael replied. Having been cramped on the train all morning, he liked the idea of finding somewhere to stretch out for a bit. They found a local coffee shop called The Dock and settled down in a quiet corner. Chris and James listened attentively to Michael as he brought them up to speed, telling them all about where he had been in London and his bizarre meeting with Father John of St. Paul's. "Interesting," Chris said as Michael finished his tale. "I'm not surprised that the church have taken an interest. I'd very much like to take a look at that map, but this probably isn't the best place for that. We'll be able to decide what our next move should be once we've studied it a bit," he said as he drained the last of his enormous pint-sized mug of coffee. If you could call it a mug. It was more like a bucket than a mug. The four of them left the coffee shop and headed back to the 4x4 and on to Martinstow. Chris was burning with eagerness to study Father John's map. Back in the confines of the library, Michael unrolled the delicate vellum scroll, carefully spreading it out over one of the reading desks, placing a few old books around the edges like paperweights to prevent it from rolling back up again. It was the first time that even Michael had been able to study the thing at length. Chris's first observation was that it was incomplete. There was a huge diagonal tear that made up one side of the map. At least half of the document was missing, torn off at some point. "Well, it's a start. This priest didn't happen to mention where the rest of it was, did he?" Chris asked. "Not in so many words. I got the impression that he didn't really know," Michael replied. "So, let's see what we've got. The Americas by the looks of things, and I presume that's Antarctica. These symbols here must represent cities or places of importance, I guess. I'm surprised, though. I wouldn't have thought there were any civilizations that could survive in Antarctica. Although there are people that live in some of the coldest parts of Siberia, so I guess it might be possible. These symbols or markings are rather strange. I haven't seen anything like them before." Chris, slightly puzzled by the vast amount of intricate markings that covered parts of the scroll. "I suppose this is some sort of key," Michael suggested, pointing to some legend in the upper left-hand corner of the parchment. "When did he say it was made?" He didn't, but he did say the glove were suspected of originating from somewhere inside Mesopotamia, some 2,000 odd years before Christ was born. "That's maybe a good place to start," Michael replied, relieved to have been able to supply a little information that might help to crack this new piece of the puzzle. Well, there's enough books in here. One of them must contain something of use on the subject. Best get searching, James said, as he pointed to the thousands of books surrounding them. Any suggestion where to start? Michael asked, slightly shocked by the suggestion, as he took in the sight of so many books. It was his first time inside the library, and although he had been told about the sheer quantity of books in the room, what he had pictured had not really done the room justice. Don't worry, I didn't mean to search every one. There's a section on ancient history somewhere in that corner, James said with the smallest of laughs, as he caught the expression on Michael's face as the Salopian took in the sight of the volume of books in the room. Michael soon located the relevant section in the corner where the west and north cases met. There were several books on Mesopotamia and the cultures that had ruled the area over the centuries. Out of these he found 3 that contained very similar symbols to that found on the map. According to the books, they were Sumerian in origin. Unfortunately, none of the books contained the exact symbols that they needed to translate the text. I think we may have to find an expert to translate these symbols. The best place to start is with the authors of these books, I think, Chris said. Give me the names and I'll do a search online for them. As Michael read the names out, Chris typed them into a search engine and waited for the results. Well, the first 2 are dead, so I don't think they'll be of much help. What's the name of the third? Dr. Devon Luca Valentine? Michael said, reading out the name on the spine of the last book. Oh yes, here we are. Dr. Devon Luca Valentine. Graduated from Oxford in 2004. Specialises in Mesopotamia and Mesoamerican cultures. Let's see if we can get a contact number for her, Chris said. His hopes had risen now that he had managed to find a living scholar. There's no direct number, but she can apparently be contacted via Oxford University or the British Museum. He rang the university only to discover that she was currently at the museum, taking part in a series of lectures. Well, I guess I'll try the museum and hopefully catch her in between lectures, he said as he picked up the receiver of the old Bakelite phone and dialed the number for the museum. He waited for someone to pick up. After a few rings, he got through to one of the museum's receptionists. Good afternoon, the British Museum. Barbara speaking. How may I help? The bland receptionist voice said. Yes, good afternoon. May I speak to Dr. Valentine, if at all possible? May I ask who's calling, please? My name's Christopher Flack. One moment, please. I'll see if she's available. Can I ask what it's regarding? Absolutely. It's regarding symbols from Mesopotamia. I'll just put you on hold, the receptionist said. The classical music played for a good few minutes before Barbara finally returned to the phone. Hello, Mr. Flack? I'm afraid she's currently in a lecture at the moment. Would you like to leave a message so she can call you back as soon as she can? Yes. Could you ask her to call me on my mobile? Let me just look it up. I never can quite remember the damn thing, he said before he looked up the number and read it out to the receptionist. Certainly, I'll pass it on to her. Thank you. With that, Chris hung up. All we can do now is wait, I suppose. Looking at his watch, it was already coming up to 5. Anyone fancy a drink? I could murder a Scotch right about now. And there's a rather fine bottle of Macallan I've had my eye on. Sounds like a good idea. I don't suppose there's any Irish, Michael asked. I don't think so. Oh well, I suppose that stuff you try to pass off of whiskey will have to do. Don't let's get started on the Irish-Scottish debate again. You'll know we'll never agree, James said with a smile. They trooped out of the library in the direction of the smoking room to indulge themselves with some more of James's uncle's spirits collection. Around about 6:30, Chris received Dr. Valentine's call. He knew as soon as he'd finished describing the parchment that he'd sparked her curiosity. She inquired whether he'd be able to send her a copy via email for her to have a look at. He agreed he would, although he had no intention of sending all of it. He jotted down her email on a small pad of paper and promised he would send it as soon as possible. Chris took a picture of the legend in the upper left-hand corner and emailed it to the address the professor had supplied. He added a quick message to say that there was a lot more to the document, but that he would like to know if she was able to decipher that part first.